When is the right time to retire? At what age you retire? That's often a financial question because people always want to retire as soon as they can afford to do so. But there should be some other things that we consider before we actually set a date of when we want to retire. There's other important questions to ask yourself. When are you old? How will retirement affect my health and well-being? What have we got planned for retirement? How are we going to spend our spare time? What are we going to do? What kind of activities are we going to do? We really got to give some thought to what retirement is. And that retirement, fully retiring, not doing anything. Oftentimes, as far as we think about, is planning that bucket list trip, buying a caravan, traveling around the world, and trying to do as little as possible and just kicking back and relaxing. That sounds great, and that's definitely what you should be doing maybe in your first year, but you need to have a plan of what you're going to do beyond that, because chances are you are going to live a long time. If you're retiring at 65, it's quite possible you're going to live another 20, 30 years. Depending on how you take care of yourself, how you plan your retirement, that could be even longer. So we really got to have a plan for, you've been working for 30 or 40 years and you're going to have 30, 40 years of retirement. And then, even though we only focus on the financial side of when we can retire, but you really got to give some thought of how long is that money going to last. And you don't want to be running out of money before you run out of years. Before you can even answer any of these questions, you need to really understand what the longevity bonus is and how it's going to affect you and society going forward. Whether you're thinking about retirement, recently retired, or very unfulfilled in retirement, there's a lot to think about. And it's never too late to start this planning to make the most of the retirement years and what we have left. To make the most of these retirement years. These really can, with correct planning, these can be the very best years of your life. Greetings. My name is Rick Ward. I'm a retirement coach and inspiring generational influencer. We're going to explore all these questions and many more coming up now. Before we can answer any specific questions, we got to have an overview, a look of the overall concept of what we're dealing with, to have better questions and better answers. So what is a longevity bonus? I first came across the term when I was researching aged care, and I come across Ken Dykewald on YouTube, and I've really changed my thinking on aging and this age wave that's coming upon us with all us baby boomers retiring. And one of the main concepts around that is the longevity bonus. We are living longer. The longevity bonus is pretty much seen as what the difference between what the life expectancy was at the end of the 19th century, when people first started coining the phrase of old age and retirement. Because prior to that, everyone died quite young, and so no one really planned for retirement. You worked until you died. The average age back in the 1880s was about 47. And so Germany was one of the first countries to have a national pension. And a man named Bismarck set an age of 65 as someone eligible to get the age pension. Now, this wasn't going to be a real issue they saw, because if you were dying around 47, you're not even going to make it there, and there would be a few that make it to 65, and if they did, well, then they're going to need some social supports. And so I'm really not quite sure how he came up with that figure. That would be like saying today that the retirement age would be 98. So I'm not quite sure how he came up with that, but he did. And then that carried forth. Not a lot of countries picked up age pensions and things like that. Everyone depended on families and churches and the community basically to take care of the few people that were lucky enough to make it into old age. And then when I say old age, at the time would have been 65. You could hardly say that 65 is old age today, when people commonly live into their 80s. And hence the difference between the 65 and the 85 is a bit of a longevity bonus. So giving some other perspective and history, After World War II, things changed drastically across the globe. Europe was very much under threat of having a tyrant of Hitler, where he was promising a better life for people. And so the attitudes of individuals after World War II was quite different than it was before World War II. It was quite a traumatic experience coming through the Depression and then a World War. People wanted to have a better life, and they wanted a better life for their children. Their expectations were higher. And hence they were a very optimistic crowd. And that's where, when the soldiers came home, we had the baby boom. I'm trying to think what the figures were, but it was like 8 out of 10 women of under 40 had children. They averaged 4 children each. And they just expected more from life than what their parents did. Coming out of Depression years, their parents were quite frugal. Coming out of this Depression area in a World War, they want a much brighter future for their children. And the democratic countries after World War II realized that they had to lift their game and to meet their people's needs. And so part of that would be some support around an age pension and some basic social welfare. So they had to set some sort of age when you'd be eligible for an age pension. It couldn't be too young, because they were going to need people to rebuild the world after World War II. So they looked at, the only literature at the time was Bismarck's, and he's saying 65. At the time, the average age span was about 67 years. And so that seemed quite reasonable, that you'd work till you're 65, you'd have 2.5 years of social support so you could enjoy life and feel secure. 65 tended to be the age that was adopted. And this had some side effects, very positive side effects, of the fact that there was an age people aim for. They tend to be very productive up to that 65, waiting for a date. There's a date that they're going to retire, and it's probably the first time people started planning for retirement, because they had a date to shoot for. And that usually entailed bucket lists or taking up hobbies. Again, though, they weren't planning to live for another 30, 40 years. They just wanted those few years after retirement to really enjoy themselves and just to relax. And that attitude carries on today. This baby boomer generation, all the other technologies are going to keep us alive for years. So even if you did start that process of not taking care of yourself, you're still likely to live another 20 years. The difference is that medical science is going to keep you alive, but at what condition are you going to be alive? Ailments, sickness, your body deteriorating, and you accepting that that's part of life. So that longevity bonus, if you do nothing about it, is just added to the end. And these are not the times that I would want my active years, because I don't want 20 more years of sickness and running out of money and all my friends being sick. If I have some say over how I would spend my longevity bonus, I would want it more in my active years, my 45 to 65, my pre-retirement years. That doesn't mean I want to work punching a clock 9 to 5 for another 20 years. I'd want to look at different types of employment and do stuff that I want, but it'd be active, a combination of employment, recreation, but very much keeping my mind and body active and healthy during that time, and trying not to draw down too much on my retirement funds, so to ensure that they last as long as I do. Today, not only is it important that we plan for this longevity bonus and what we'll be doing in our years, the governments today are realizing now that they're not going to be able to cope with this tsunami of retirees, well as baby boomers, and we're living so much longer. So even though the accepted age of retirement is still at 65, but that's starting to creep up with retirement funds and superannuation funds, pensions. I believe in my case, I'm getting towards the end, the last of the baby boomers. I think I need to be 67 before I can collect an age pension here in Australia. And every year after that it goes up, and so like my sister-in-law, who's just a few years younger than me, she has to work till she's 70. There's going to be tremendous strain on the system. And so I worry about the superannuation retirement funds. People could be means tested if you have resources and other people haven't planned for it and the government can't support them. There's a chance that you could be taxed very heavily if you actually had your money. Not only do we need to prepare for how we're going to plan out our longevity bonus, the governments are also scurrying around, realizing now that they're just not going to have the resources to support this tsunami again of baby boomers all retiring. They're doing their best to encourage retirement savings and different plans for superannuation, so you fund your own retirement, so it'll be less burden on the government. But unfortunately, if people are going to live that much longer, most people won't save enough to support them all through that time, so they're going to come back onto government subsidies. And what I worry about is, even though I may have tucked away money in my retirement and did my best to prepare financially, the governments could look at means testing and say the fact that I have enough funds that I could be taxed heavily to help support other people who were unable or didn't plan to save for their retirement. This can be a concern for me. It could overwhelm the whole system, and the retirement pensions just disappear, and we resort back to a time when churches and community and families had to care for their elderly. And there'll be much more burden today than it was in the past, because again, we're going to be living so much longer. We're going to require carers. Where in the past for the families and churches and stuff, there was only a few years they would have to take care of their loved ones. It can be a very scary proposition, but it doesn't have to be doom and gloom, with some real assertive planning and some forethought now. And it doesn't really matter if you're already retired. It's never too late to reevaluate how you're going to spend your retirement years and plan. I think it's particularly clear if you have retired, you've probably noticed your financial situation probably isn't what you thought it was going to be. Particularly if you've retired, in the last 10 years of the GFC and superannuation. So many people had to sell capital in their retirement just to keep themselves going. I know that happened with my father. He'd set up himself pretty good when he retired, but when all the dividends just disappeared and lost companies had disappeared, he actually had to sell most of his retirement portfolio to maintain himself. And today, that's all gone, and he's relying totally on government subsidies. And so that can be a very scary thought. I really love the work of Ken Dykewalt, and I encourage you all to check him out on YouTube, and his company's AgeWave, and they do all the scientific research around longevities. And it really changed my mindset of how I want to spend my longevity bonus. I guess I was still going down the track that I just needed to have as much money as I could to support me while I'm out there. But the simple fact is, I don't just want to live longer, I want to be healthy. I want to enjoy those extra 20 years. And I want to reduce, we all have an end date, and the end date oftentimes is related to chronic illness. And I want that period to be as short as possible. And there's a lot I can do about that. And so I've drawn up my own plan about how I want to spend my longevity bonus, where I want to inject those extra 20 years more in my productive years. And out of that, I developed a program, and I'm doing a series of videos following this, so watch out for this. And I call it 7 Steps to 40 Again. And there are the 7 areas that I saw I needed to deal with to prepare myself for a healthy transition into retirement. And I think this is absolutely crucial, and this will probably be key around my whole YouTube business and my advice and things going forward, is to use mindset and some good planning to really get the most out of your retirement, to maximize your health and fulfillment, and to reduce the stressors on yourself and your family. So those retirement years truly are your golden years. So that's a very brief description of the longevity bonus. I'd encourage you Google it and to look at YouTube videos on it. It's a very real thing, and it's going to help you understand why you need to do some planning now, regardless of what stage you're in. It's never too late to make a good plan. It'll all become more clear to you as you watch my next video series with the 7 Steps to 40 again. So make sure you tune in for that. If you're new to this channel, then I'd ask you to hit the subscribe button. If you want to make sure you don't miss any videos, then hit the notification bell and they'll let you know whenever I release a video. You'll notice on all my videos now that on the bottom corner there's a small watermark for subscribe. You don't need to push on that. If you push on it, it'll go back to my home page. If you just hover over the top, and it'll give subscribe now, and you can push on that subscribe there and you become a subscriber. You can also follow me on Facebook, Your Journey Transitions, and you can follow me on my website, yourjourneytransitions.com. I encourage you to check out all my videos, but definitely look at this 7 Steps to 40 again. So until then, this is Rick Ward, your guide through your retirement stages, wishing you an extraordinary retirement.
This is like a cocoon.
What comes out of a cocoon?
Butterflies.
Are butterflies beautiful?
Yes.